Hi, this is Jordan Hayes with Hayes Family Farms, and this is my brother Jared, and we're out here today. We're going to move the cattle and show you how that process works. So Jared, what's your main role on the farm and what do you do on a daily basis?
Well, I'm the primary caretaker of all of our cattle. I work full-time here on the family farm, and I do about 90 to 99% of the cattle moving and cattle chores and building fences and setting up all the infrastructure that's required for our cattle operation.
So would you consider yourself a cowboy?
Cowboy rancher, I don't know. And so we're here at one of our pastures right now. It's about 40-acre pasture that we've been leasing for about a year and a half now. When we came in here, the previous land managers had used this as a continuous grazing farm, and so we've been working to regenerate the soil and keep our cattle moving around and give it rest time in between grazes, so that we can keep increasing the biodiversity and just overall productivity of this land. If you can see around me and behind me here, we've got a little bit of grass. The cattle were on this piece of land right here about a week ago. They're currently over in that direction. We're going to go over there here in a minute. But, you know, with it being kind of a dry year, we don't have a ton of grass out here. But with we've gotten several inches of rain in the past several weeks, so things are starting to pick back up, and we're starting to get some good regrowth that should take us pretty well into the fall season, and hopefully we'll have a little bit stockpiled for the winter as well.
So with the drought and not having as much grass as normal, has that really impacted the cattle a lot, or do they still have plenty to eat?
Well, our job is to make sure that it doesn't impact the cattle. What it affects is the way that we manage the movements and things like that. So, you know, and some people would say that we're doing rotational grazing, but what we're really doing is adaptive grazing, where we're constantly monitoring the state of the pasture before the cattle are on it, and then what happens while they're on it and how they leave it once we move them on to the next piece. And so sometimes we'll move them more often, sometimes we'll move them less often. It's all needs to stay adaptive constantly, so that, you know, we're leaving behind a good amount of the forage so that it can regrow quickly, and also making sure that the cattle have plenty of forage to eat every day.
All right, so we're down here now, ready to move the cattle. They're all coming this way.
Yep, they just woke up. They heard us driving over here, and they're ready to go get some fresh grass.
So, Jared, what kind of containment system do you have for the cattle? Like, how do you keep them in the areas you want them?
Well, you can see here we've got poly wire that we use. Around this pasture, there's mainly barbed wire that's been here for a long time. You know, it's like 6 strands of barbed wire. But we've also got a single strand of high tensile electrical wire that's powered by a solar charger that goes around the perimeter of this whole pasture. And so we can connect our poly wires up to that single strand of high tensile electrical wire. And for those of you unfamiliar with the poly wire, here's one of our reels. It's a ratcheting mechanism, and you can pull out some and then reconnect the ratchet and pull it up like that. And you'll see here in a minute, I'm going to pull back this poly wire so that they can go into the next paddock here.
So when you section off the pasture, what sizes are your paddocks, and how do you determine that?
Well, it's constantly changing as we monitor the state of the forage and the paddocks that they're coming off of and going on to, and you know, it changes throughout the season and also every day, depending on how tall the forage is in each specific area. But in general, you know, in the springtime when we're getting a lot of growth and grass is real high, they'll maybe have an acre a day. But any other time of year, especially later in the summer like this, and since we've had so much dry weather, they're using about 1.5 acres to 2 acres a day. And sometimes I'll move them twice a day, sometimes I'll move them once a day. It just kind of depends on what my goal is for that piece of land.
Would you say the cattle are excited to move?
Yeah, they're very excited. I'm hoping that these microphones that we're using are making it so where you can still hear me over all them calling. Because as soon as they realize that I'm out here to move them, they get excited and they all come up and they're ready to move.
They're basically waiting in line.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of a hierarchy out here. There's some of them that are always ready to move first, and then there's some of them that kind of drag behind, and they're the lazier ones, I guess. But anyway, so with our watering situation out here, you can see up there in the background, we've got a 600-gallon water trough that's easy to move around. I drag it with the four-wheeler, and you can also maybe see the vinegar tub that we've got up there. We feed them apple cider vinegar and Redmond sea salt mixed together. But most of the time, if we don't have access to well water, then we'll pull water out of any natural resources that we can, like a creek or a pond. And so that's what we do here, and we use 1.5-inch diameter hose.
So the pond is behind you here.
Yeah, and we pump the water out of that pond. We can go up to about 800 feet with the amount of hose that we've got right now, and so we can cover a lot of ground and keep the water moving with them. But currently, since it'll save some time and labor, there's down here and there's a ditch that runs down into this pond. Water, sometimes in the wetter times of the year, there'll be water flowing out of that because there's kind of a creek that comes out of those woods, and we get some water from drainage tiles from the surrounding fields. But there's also, you can maybe see back in the distance there's a couple of heifers down there in that ditch, and about where they're at, there's what we're pretty sure is a natural spring that flows all year round, even when it's really dry, like it has been the past few months out here. And so they get some nice fresh water out of that that's constantly flowing up out of the ground, even when there's no drainage tiles running or when the creek's dried up.
All right, so ready to move them?
Yeah.
Where should I stand at?
You can just stay where you're at.
Okay.
And to clarify a little bit, normally I would try to get them all gathered up in this one spot and move them all together. But since I'm going to leave this open to them for now so that they can wander down there and get access to that water. And also here in a couple days, because we've got maybe 3 or 4 days worth of moving to do off in this direction. We're going to graze this pasture up here to the north of us. But by Sunday, it's supposed to get real hot again. And so in order to give them access to shade, we're going to leave an alleyway that goes back up that way. There's some trees up to the south of us up that hill that they'll be able to go up there and hang out in the shade during the day, and then whenever they feel like it, they can come out and graze.
There's a bug on my camera. Got him. All right.
So, yeah, if you guys are ready, then we're going to go ahead and move them. And you can see Red is always one of the first ones to get up there and get.
Looks like all the mamas with their babies are hanging back here. It takes the babies a little bit longer to move. They're a little bit slower. Here they come.
Go on. Go on, Mama.
They're very excited. They're kicking their heels. Looks like Jared's going to help the stragglers. Anything else to add?
Well, you can see that this is kind of a long, narrow strip of pasture that they've got access to here. I don't recall right now exactly how long it is, but aside from this section right here where it spreads out a little bit, you know, once you get up to that little corner, it goes up to the north a couple 100 yards, and I set it up to where it's about 20 yards wide. And what that does is, when they've got long, narrow strips, as opposed to, you know, a big open square piece of land, they'll move back and forth. If you sat out here and watched them for an hour, they'll just walk back and forth and graze, because cattle like to walk and move around while they're eating, and it's just part of their instinct and nature. And so as they move back and forth up and down this long, narrow strip, they'll get nice, even grazing and impact across the land, so that things grow back evenly, and it makes it easier for us to monitor and control how much they've grazed.